Welcome to the first episode of Exploring the Messy Middle, where over the next 15 minutes we're going to discover how behavioural economics can help your brand show up in the right place at the right time to boost sales, conversions and brand love. I'm Dan Monheit, co-founder and strategy director at Hardhat, and joining me from Google Australia and New Zealand are two consumer behaviour specialists. First up, we've got Head of Consumer Market Research, Rachel Powell.
Hey everyone.
Hey Rach. And joining her, we've got Head of Strategy and Insights, Kristen Sutter.
Hello.
Hey, Kristen. So first up, guys, I got to say, as a certified behavioral economics enthusiast, I got to say I am super excited to be talking with you guys about this concept and also all the research you guys have been doing.
Well, that's good to hear. Then you will fit right in with us, Dan. So research is definitely mine and Rachel's jam.
And we've actually got some really interesting stuff to share out with everyone today.
Amazing. So if I believe what it says on the tin, we are going to be talking about the messy middle. My first questions are, what on earth is that? Where do we even begin?
So I hopefully can answer that a little bit with a story about a purchase I made. So bear with me through this. I promise it'll pay off. But I live in Sydney, and my husband and I last year decided that we were going to go down to the Australian Open because my husband's a huge tennis fan and I did not do a very good job at getting him a good Christmas gift. So I had some ground to make up. So I wanted to look for a good hotel. I did a quick search online, but I go to Melbourne quite often for work, and there's a Grand Hyatt that is literally across the street from our office. I'm all about a short commute, rolling out of bed, and potentially cartwheeling to work, so that's almost always where I stay.
For sure.
Yeah. So I'm also a member of their loyalty program, so I checked up prices, looked at locations, tried to see what was nearer to the tennis, but assumed that I would stay at a Hyatt because, remember, got to rack up those loyalty points.
Got to get them points.
Yes. But then I came across a new hotel. It had great reviews, the same number of stars as that Hyatt, and the thing was they were offering me a free breakfast with our booking. And yeah.
We know how this is going to end.
Yeah. The way to my heart is offering me free food. The ridiculous part was, though, we didn't even end up using the breakfast because both mornings we ended up going straight out to the tennis.
I mean, can totally see how that happens. Cool story and all. What does this have to do with the messy middle?
Yeah, so I promise.
Come on.
I'm about to tie it in, Dan. It's okay. But the messy middle really came through and came to life in my research for that hotel. So from a general marketing lens, if you're just looking at me on paper, you'd assume, okay, she needs a hotel. She's going to book with Hyatt because she's a loyalty member and aware of their brand. And I've often used it before, but we all know that that's not actually what happened. So what mattered to me in that moment was getting more value, albeit in the form of a free Avo toast. And in that moment, my loyalty to Hyatt didn't matter at all. The decision I made was an emotional one, not a rational one. So when we started thinking about the research, it turns out that I am not alone in this. There are a lot of irrational emotional behaviors that come into play when people make purchase decisions. And that is the space that we're calling the messy middle. And that is also what we're going to try to help marketers untangle in this series. Right, Rach?
Yeah, look, that's exactly right. And the way I like to think about the messy middle is it's everything the consumer is thinking, seeing, doing, researching, and being influenced by in between that point in time when she thinks, I need to buy something, and actually making the purchase itself.
Wow, okay. So if this is everything the consumer is thinking, feeling, seeing, doing, researching, this sounds like it's going to get pretty complicated pretty quick.
Yeah, look, it is quite complex, and untangling it has been a real challenge. And that's why Google has been researching it globally over the past 24 months. And
I guess if there's one thing we all know that Google loves, it is a bit of academic research.
Yes.
Yes, apparently we get out of bed for two things: a free breakfast and research. But look, we're hugely passionate about it, and understanding consumer decision making is really important, both for Google so that we can build better experiences and products for our users, and also to help our advertiser and agency partners deliver some fabulous marketing across our platforms.
Awesome. And that is what this 4-part series is all about. So Rachel, Kristen, let the learning begin.
Okay, so bear with me again. To understand the messy middle, you're going to need to come with me on a journey back to about 1997. Let's say a time when jeans are extremely baggy.
Guilty.
And in the 90s, a typical brand selling those gigantic jeans is splitting their marketing between two key areas: the brand marketing, which is typically used as broadcast media and to build that long-term impact or brand awareness, and then performance marketing, which is used as more of a direct response media and for short-term impact in sales.
So I guess what we'd refer to today as awareness and action, right?
Yes, correct. So me as a consumer, I'm seeing those baggy jeans on the street and apparently still on you, Dan.
They look good. Come on. They're going to be back any minute now, I swear to you.
I mean, well, I'll hope so for your sake. But I see those jeans out and on the street, and I see an advertisement then, and that's the nudge I need to walk into a store and buy it.
Right, and here are your gigantic jeans, ma'am.
Yes, bag those up. But now you cut forward 2 and a bit decades, and both the style of jeans, thankfully, and the way we buy them has completely changed. So now I can go online and browse, compare, and rank any product or service from any brand globally and instantly. I can ask my friends what they think. I can find out what Ryan Gosling or the latest celebrity thinks. I can go in and out of 20 shops on my coffee break, or in and out of that exact same shop over and over without it feeling super awkward. And I can even shop in my pajamas, which I have been known to do.
I love shopping in pajamas.
Absolutely. It's one of the perks. And by the time I've purchased something, I've usually bought something completely different from what I was looking for initially through all of these different moments of research. So the way that we shop for products and services today is completely different and fundamentally changed.
Right, there's no question about that. And so I guess it also makes complete sense that the way we market needs to catch up with that.
Yes, it's no longer this linear path from awareness to purchase. Although sometimes it's easier for us to plan that way, but we really need to untangle what's going on in the middle there so that our marketing can actually meet people and consumers where they are rather than where we want them to be.
All right, Rach, I'm going to turn to you for this bit. How do we even begin to get a grasp on consumer behavior in this level of complexity?
Yeah, we have, or Kristen and I have a saying, which is, when in doubt, science is your friend.
Real? That's a real saying?
Yeah, you are on a series with 2 researchers, so this is about as cool as it gets.
I can't wait for the Christmas party with you guys. It's going to be awesome.
So we've actually been poring over behavioural science literature, where experts in this field have been studying consumers and the way people make decisions for decades. And in that time, they've uncovered more than 300 principles that underpin how we behave. It's actually worth noting that these are universal principles. So they should hold true whether you're on the 90s high street buying hugely ugly jeans.
What ugly? No, baggy, hugely baggy jeans. Right, please.
Or on the iconic.com today. What's really interesting for us is more around how these principles are manifesting in the digital space.
Right, so we're talking about 300 different principles. There's a lot of research that needs to get done here. Surely that is a lot for you and Kristen to take on between the two of you.
Yeah, we reached out to a wonderful research agency, the Behavioural Architects, who are global experts in this space. And together we narrowed down those 300 principles into the special 7 that are most relevant for how consumers make decisions in that messy middle.
Right, and I guess that those 7 is what form the basis for the research project, right?
Yeah, and we're going to take you guys through these principles in detail and the research as well throughout the course of this series.
Okay, awesome. I cannot wait to get stuck into that. But I guess an early question I've got is, what on earth did this research look like? I mean, it must have been gigantic, like a pair of 90s jeans, gigantic.
Yeah, look, it was huge. We actually gained permission from hundreds and hundreds of shoppers across a huge number of categories to follow them on their path to purchase. So we captured both video and audio so that we could see what they were doing, and also they could talk us through it as they were doing it. And this gave us thousands of hours of data to observe. We then looked at that data through the lens of behavioural principles, and that put us in a great position to really update our model of consumer decision making.
Okay, and that updated model of consumer decision making, I guess that's what we're referring to as the messy middle, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, I'm with you guys. And what did we find out?
So before we get to the new model, we're actually going to pause here, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about an astronaut riding a dinosaur.
Right, of course you are, right? You guys are scientists, so this is a completely normal thing to do.
Stay with me here. This is actually a really critical foundation for the study. So here we have, or think about, an astronaut, highly intelligent, really rational, riding a huge dinosaur, who as a wild animal is going to be a little bit more unpredictable. Right now, the astronaut is in control. Go forwards, go backwards, left, right, everything's fine.
But hang on a sec, what's going on now?
So now we're getting a slightly different vibe. The astronaut, despite her intelligence, is not going to be able to stop several tons of dinosaur from taking a bath if it wants to. The astronaut in this example represents our rational mind. The dinosaur is our emotional mind, the one driven by implicit biases. We all like to think we're rational creatures, and sure enough, our astronaut is often in charge, but only when the dinosaur doesn't have desires of its own. We've actually looked at study after study, and the thing that we found is humans are driven not by rational processing of information, but by emotional implicit biases.
That's right. And I guess while these emotional, implicit, irrational behaviours are really important to recognise, it's the fact that they are predictably irrational, to borrow a term from the great Dan Ariely, that makes them so useful to us.
Yes, absolutely. And I know that I am consistently guilty of making the same sorts of irrational choices. Like me choosing a hotel based on a breakfast that I never ended up having. I would totally do that again.
Yeah, it's like we just won't learn, right? So we've all been there, and it is this predictability that makes these behaviours really useful and interesting to us as marketers, because once we know what they are, we can start using them to our advantage. And I guess that's why sometimes I like to think about behavioural economics as knowing the cheat codes for the game of sales.
Yeah, look, that's actually a really great way to put it. And we're going to focus on what those cheat codes are in the next episode. And I think it's that balance between understanding the role of the rational versus the emotional drivers is what makes it so critical when you start to untangle that messy middle.
Yes, and I like to think about it in terms of sort of that left and right brain. So that left is the astro brain, the right, dino brain. And some real world examples that I'm sure we've all been in are the astro brain is the one that sets the alarm. The dino brain is the one that snoozes the alarm. The astro brain commits to a diet, and then the dino brain decides that 3 p.m. piece of cheesecake is a great idea. The astro brain knows that 2 cereals on the shelf probably taste the exact same, but the dino brain is willing to pay more for the branded cereal anyway.
Oh, dino brain.
Yeah, there's certainly no escaping that dino brain. But actually understanding it is what this research sets out to do. You know, those kind of more emotional aspects of how we make decisions don't show up in things like brand tracking or surveys, because at the end of the day, we all like to justify our decisions as being really rational. A good example for me is I have a complete love affair with shoes, and the other evening I got home after buying my 8th pair of black high heel shoes. My husband kind of looked at me and I quickly said, oh, but they're a completely different shade of black to my other 7 black pairs.
Of course they are.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of a challenge when we're trying to uncover these, but these irrational behaviors do show up when we start to use controlled experiments, and that's how we've begun to map that messy middle.
Awesome. All right, Rachel, Kristen, we're going to have to leave it there for today, but what is coming up in the next episode?
Ooh, so get excited, because we are going to talk about our new model of consumer decision making. We've drawn it based off of the evidence that we just uncovered, and we'll also start digging into those 7 behavioral principles that are driving consumer behavior that Rach just mentioned. So in other words, how do we help understand and talk to that dino brain?
Awesome. All right. Well, my dino brain and my astro brain are both very, very excited about episode 2 of The Messy Middle. So stay tuned. We'll be posting it on the Australian and New Zealand Think with Google page, which can be found at thinkwithgoogle.com/AUNZ. Thank you guys so much for joining us.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.